Welcome to Your Family's Health, the program that focuses on healthcare issues with unique and different modalities for taking charge of your health today. Experts talk weekly with our continuing roster of guests from around the country and right here in Nassau County to keep you up to date on the latest health issues and trends. Take care of your mind, body, and soul. Spend the next half hour with the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and get on the journey to better health.
Hello and welcome to Your Family's Health. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. Along with my co-hosts, Nassau Community College nursing students Asim Aleem and Pascal Thomas, who is completing her master's degree in nursing education. And today we're talking about the road to recovery. Our special guest today is Dr. Michael D. McGee, who is the Chief Medical Officer at the Haven at Pismo in California and author of The Joy of Recovery, the 12-step guide to recovery from addiction. He is a board certified in General Adult Psychiatry, Addiction Psychiatry, and Psychosomatic Medicine. Dr. McGee, welcome to Your Family's Health on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Glad to have you. So first, tell us some about what people need to know about being on a path of recovery. What does that all mean?
Sure. So recovery is basically, being free from addiction. When we talk about addiction, it's being addiction free, and what it means is living a free and joyful life of being able to enjoy life and savor life, and also to be able to nurture life, to contribute in some way, and realize really the fulfillment of loving. I see recovery really as the practice of love.
So when we're talking about addiction, could you define for me what do you mean by addiction and what can you be addicted to?
Sure. So a very simple definition of addiction has 4 components, and they are compulsive, out of control, good now, bad later behavior. So compulsive and out of control behavior that maybe is good in the moment, immediately gratifying, but has long-term negative consequences. And really, if you think about it, it's the out-of-control piece that really defines addiction. So, for example, let's say that you come home and you have a bad habit of maybe watching a little bit too much TV at night, when really maybe it would be in your highest good to maybe spend some time talking to your partner or connecting with friends or maybe doing some volunteer work perhaps or something else. And you decide, you know what, I want to watch less TV, I want to meditate more, I want to exercise more. And you go about the hard work of changing that bad habit. If you can change that bad habit through effort, then that's really not an addiction, it's just a bad habit. I think of addiction as in a way a disease of habit, where it's a bad habit that is destructive, again, compulsive and out of control, good now, bad later behavior, that you can't voluntarily change. And so if you think about it, a lot of us have a vulnerability to addictions. Addictions can be to substances like alcohol or drugs, but they can also be process addictions to certain behaviors that are reward or relief-seeking behavior. So it could be to sex or the internet or spending or technology. There are also some compulsive psychological habits that sometimes people may try to change, but they find that they can't change on their own, such as judging other people or gossiping, or maybe engaging in an attachment to a relationship which is destructive to you, or sometimes what's called a love addiction. So addiction can take many different forms, but again, following that formula of compulsive, out of control, good now, bad later behavior.
So does an individual self-identify as being addicted to some behavior or substance, or is it something that you're diagnosed with?
So that's a good question. I mean, one of the 2 hallmarks of addiction is minimization and denial. And it's almost like there's a part of you that in the back of your mind, in your quiet, reflective moments, you might have the thought that goes by in what's called the preconscious, where you just sort of have a passing thought, this is out of control and this is not good for me. So I think everybody has those kinds of thoughts, but the addiction by its nature wants to perpetuate itself. And one of the ways that it perpetuates itself is by denying that there's a problem or minimizing the consequences of the problem. So a lot of people with addiction, they're controlled by the addiction in a way where they have impaired insight. And it may be sometimes that needing sort of loving feedback from people around them is needed to raise their awareness. There's different stages of the process of recovery. One of the first stages is called pre-contemplation. And in that stage, you're just not even aware that you have an addiction at all. So people vary in terms of their awareness or insight into their addiction.
And I can imagine that, or would you say that we all have, or many people have addictions that they're willing to, come to terms with or even acknowledge?
I think addiction is epidemic in our country. If you take food addiction, for example, that we really have an epidemic of food addiction. And then you add substance addictions on top of that, and then spending addictions where people, I really shouldn't be spending this money, I should be saving, but they just can't help themselves, and it's a bad habit that they just can't stop on their own. If it's a bad habit that you can't stop on your own, then it's likely an addiction. I think that a lot of us, if we look very carefully at our lives, many of us can see that there's one addiction or more.
And what were some of the steps in the beginning of your crafting of your 12-step guide?
So what I did was, I'd been working for about 20 years with people with addictions, and as I did that along the way, I sort of developed basically a list of sort of principles of addiction, and I came up with about 50 to 60 different principles of addiction. And as I looked at those and I worked with patients with those principles, at some point it came clear to me that they could be organized into more higher order sort of organizing principles, and those sort of filtered down into these 12 touchstones of recovery that I developed.
You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College, along with student co-hosts Asim Aleem and Pascal Thomas, who is completing her master's degree in nursing education. And today we're talking to Dr. Michael D. McGee, Chief Medical Officer at the Haven at Pismo in California, and author of The Joy of Recovery, the 12-step guide to recovery from addiction. So, Dr. McGee, could you tell us a little bit, just gloss over the 12 steps of recovery?
Okay. Sure. So there's 12 touchstones, and they sort of go a little bit in sequence, that one builds on the other. The first touchstone is to work on your recovery, which meaning that it's an active process every day of thinking about recovery, talking about recovery, going to meetings, reading, doing something to work on your recovery, working with a recovery mentor or coach every day. The second touchstone is to create a foundation for recovery in terms of a positive recovery environment that's safe, supportive, and stable and sober, so that you have an environment that can support your recovery. The third touchstone is to renounce all addicting, to really root out all self-destructive addiction behavior, including smoking and other cross addictions like eating and gambling and compulsive sexual behavior, those sorts of things. The fourth touchstone is to, again, create a foundation for recovery by acting with integrity, really doing the next right thing in everything that you say and do. The fifth touchstone is to heal. A lot of people with addictions have trauma histories. About 80% have a severe or significant trauma history, or have psychiatric or medical illnesses which need attention. And the bottom line is, to recover, you have to be healed and whole to recover effectively. The sixth touchstone is to practice love, to really engage in loving relationships, to love yourself and to love others, and engage in surrounding yourself in a network of loving relationships. The seventh touchstone is to respect reality, to really come into humble and harmonious alignment with the way that things are, and not to to practice acceptance and even reverence for this sacred moment exactly as it is. The eighth touchstone is to grow. Recovery is not a static destination. It's a dynamic, lifelong process, and to continue to work on one's personal and spiritual and interpersonal and occupational growth throughout one's life. The ninth touchstone is to persevere. Recovery is a process of learning through failures and setbacks, and to not give up, but to get up and to keep moving on. The tenth touchstone, which is related to love, is to really develop healthy relationships, in particular with recovery supports and recovery mentors, to get out of abusive relationships, to really set limits and boundaries around people who are harmful to you, and to really surround yourself with healthy, loving people who can help teach you how to be in healthy relationship. The 11th touchstone is to take radical accountability for your life and for your own success in all of your affairs. And the last touchstone, the 12th touchstone, is to cultivate your spirituality. And really, that really comes in the third phase of recovery, which is the phase of self-realization, to really come to the full flowering of your being in life. Ultimately, spirituality, I think of addiction as sort of a medical illness with a spiritual solution, and ultimately in cultivating your spirituality, that really serves as the greatest and ultimate protection against the disease of addiction.
Okay. Can you tell us who tracks the patient's progress through these steps, and how long does it take to get through these steps?
So, when you're working when I work with patients, I track their progress through these different touchstones, working on several of them at the same time. There's three phases to recovery. There's the getting sober phase. There's the healing and repair phase, where you heal and fix the damage to your life and create a stable, functional, working life. And then there's the third phase of self-realization. And going through all those phases takes for most people about 3 to 5 years. Ultimately, recovery never ends. The last stage of self-realization goes on until the day that we die, hopefully.
So is this a in office? Do you see your patients in office, or is this a group therapy? How do we see this working? So
there are different forms of treatment depending on where you're at in your recovery and the severity of your illness. At the Haven, we have a residential detox program. We have residential treatment programs. We have partial programs that are 6 hours a day. And then we have an intensive outpatient program that's a few hours every evening. And then we also have outpatient services as well. For a lot of people, after they get through the initial stabilization of getting sober, they may do that in a residential or detox setting to sort of stabilize their life, and then transition them to a safe recovery environment, a safe and sober recovery environment, where they can do a period of intensive treatment at beginning the healing and repair process, putting recovery supports into place, developing recovery routines and rituals, and learning basic recovery skills like how to call somebody and talk out a craving when you have it. That's part of working on recovery, is learning how to manage triggers and cravings. And recovery is not so much what you know, but what you can do. Recovery is more skill-based than knowledge-based, really. Mm-hmm. So knowing how to connect with somebody every day and be transparent and authentic with them and receive support and guidance humbly, knowing how to have humility, how to know to really access resources and supports that are greater than yourself, knowing how to talk out cravings, knowing how to avoid and manage triggers in your life that trigger cravings to addict. These are all skills. And in the initial phase of getting sober, people need to learn and practice these skills, and they benefit from a very intensive treatment environment oftentimes to do that. But after initial stabilization, the real meat of transformation that is recovery takes place in an outpatient setting. And for a lot of people, they benefit from a long-term, what are called attachment-oriented process groups. A lot of people have damage to their capacity to love and be loved. I really see many people with addiction as having what I call a love deficit disorder. Mm-hmm. They have a deficiency in their capacity to love and be loved. And they need to learn that skill of loving and being loved. It's something that is learned through practice. And the way that we practice that in a safe and supportive and guided setting is in long-term outpatient groups. It's oftentimes a very key and important setting for people to begin to learn the skill of loving.
Thank you very much, Dr. McGee. Let's take a quick break. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the Nursing Department here at Nassau Community College, along with my student co-host, Asim Aleem, and Pascal Thomas, who is completing her master's degree in nursing education. And today we're talking to Dr. Michael D. McGee, Chief Medical Officer at the Haven at Pismo in California, and author of The Joy of Recovery, the new 12-step guide to recovery from addiction. You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba,
please be done.
Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Are you the parent of a blind child? The National Federation of the Blind knows blindness does not have to hold your child back. With support, education, and mentoring, your child can turn her dreams into reality. We know because we are parents who have made it happen. Visit us at nfb.org/parents to learn how we can help you and your family. National Federation of the Blind. Live the life you want.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lonray Falusi with today's tip for kids from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Getting ready for a new baby is a busy time. An important decision is how you will feed your baby. Breastfeeding will give your baby the best start in life. Breast milk is easy to digest, and it has all the nutrients your baby needs. Breast milk protects babies from diseases and infections, and the close physical contact creates a special bond. If you have questions about breastfeeding, talk with your pediatrician and visit healthychildren.org.
We now return to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
And thanks for being with us today. This is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the Nursing Department here at Nassau Community College, along with my student co-host, Asim Aleem, nursing student, and Pascal Thomas, who is completing her master's degree in nursing education. And today we're talking with Dr. Michael McGee, Chief Medical Officer at the Haven at Pismo in California, and author of The Joy of Recovery, the new 12-step guide to recovery from addiction. So Pascal has a question for you, Dr. McGee.
Okay, great, Pascal. Go ahead.
Okay, so now can you tell us about your book, The Joy of Recovery, the new 12-step guide to recovery and addiction?
And specifically, I just want to ask you if you can explain to us that well-mind method that you have in your book.
Oh, sure. So really what the well-mind method comes down to is really the practice of love. It really is about, and the way that I define love is really two things. It's not so much an emotion, although there can be emotions associated with the practice of love, but really it's more of an underlying attitude of reverence for yourself, for others, and for life. It's a sense of a deep knowing that you are sacred and that others are sacred, and that this moment, this precious, miraculous moment of existence is sacred. So at its root, it's a profoundly spiritual thing, the sense of this attitude of reverence. And then out of that reverence, which oftentimes is inspired by a feeling of oneness with others and with all of life, out of that sense of reverence then comes the inspiration to act, to enhance life, and to nurture life, and to contribute to life, to our lives and to the lives of others. And really, that is the root of the Well Mind Method. It's really about a rehabilitation or a habilitation of our capacity to love and be loved. And it's really at the root of my book, because if you think about it, if you truly held yourself as sacred, if you cherished yourself as if you were your own cherished child, you would never do anything to harm yourself in any way out of your reverence for yourself, including addicting or any other kinds of self-destructive behaviors. And you would take great care to protect yourself from harm. And why you would do that is because you would want to keep yourself healthy and whole and vital, so that you could then go and really pursue your mission in life, which really has two components. One is to enjoy life and to savor this gift of existence, this miracle of existence, but then also to go out and then to nurture life. I think we need to take good care of ourselves so that we can ultimately forget ourselves in the process of living for loving and serving other people. So that really is the root of the Well Mind Method, which is, again, cultivating this capacity to love, cultivating our reverence for ourselves and others and for life, and cultivating our capacity to go out and practice love in our lives, engage in the practice of love. And what I've developed is a list of 30 different love practices. And so in my work with people who I see as having, if you will, a love deficit disorder, my work is twofold. One is in terms of helping them engage in practices to cultivate their reverence for themselves and others, which are oftentimes contemplative or stillness practices. And then I have a number of cognitive behavioral and relational practices, 30 different love practices that I help patients coach them in practicing in their lives. Practices like generosity or consideration or collaboration or authenticity or assertiveness or having hope or empathy for other people or forgiveness. There's many different love practices. So those constitute, if you will, what I call the Well Mind Method.
So if you see recovery as an act of love, if you will, what about those individuals who are resistant to recovery? Would you say that's a form of self-hate? Or would you say that's...
I do think that there is, in the psychoanalytic literature on addiction, there are people who sort of understand that because of trauma, people do hate themselves. They consider themselves bad. And about 80 to 90% perhaps of people who suffer from addiction have some sort of significant trauma. And trauma makes you feel that you're bad. It's funny how that works, but with trauma comes shame and oftentimes self-hatred, especially the trauma of neglect. And so people are split. Part of them want to feel good, but another part of them want to destroy themselves. So you oftentimes see people who have this urge to feel better right now, engage in good now, bad later behavior, because they really don't care about the long-term consequences. They just want to feel good in this moment, but at the same time unconsciously fulfill that desire and that feeling that they have that they deserve to suffer and that they deserve to be destroyed or to be harmed. It's hard. Sometimes that's conscious for people, and sometimes it's more unconscious. But you really see that split where there's a mixture of ambivalence of self-love and self-hatred at the same time.
That's fascinating. So if one of our friends listening wanted to get in contact with you, give us the website or information.
Sure. So they could go to thejoyofrecovery.com. That's easy. Or to drmichaelmcgee.com, drmichaelmcgee.com, and they can reach me that way. If somebody wanted to reach out to me in an email, my email is M as in Michael, D as in David, M as in McGee, MDM, at wellmind, like a happy brain, wellmind.com, MDM at wellmind.com. And I would welcome listeners if they wanted to reach out to me with questions.
And where can we find your book?
At Amazon, The Joy of Recovery on Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. And I'm with my co-hosts, Sem Aleem, nursing student, and Pascal Thomas, who is completing her master's degree in nursing education. And today we were talking to Dr. Michael D. McGee, Chief Officer at the Haven at Pismo in California, and author of The Joy of Recovery, the new 12-step guide to recovery from addiction. So we thank you very much for being with us, Dr. McGee.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, before we go, I wanted to know if you have any parting thoughts that you want to leave with the listeners.
I think it takes three things to engage in recovery, and those three things are pain, hope, and help. And so if you know somebody, if you have a loved one who's suffering from addiction, think about those three components to transformation. Because pain is a stern but important and powerful messenger for us that things aren't right. And pain can point the way for us to a better way. If it's combined with hope, if there's hope that there's a better way than addiction, a better way to realize joy and fulfillment in life than engaging in addiction, if we have the pain of the addiction and then the hope of a better way, and then most importantly as well, the help of other people to help us, be humble, be surrendered, ask for help, seek help. That combination of pain and hope and help, that combination is what will save you.
Very good. Thank you so much. I learned a lot during this interview. Thank you so much for your time and for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, Dr. Michael D. McGee. And this is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College, along with my co-hosts, Sem and Pascal Thomas. And we thank you for listening to this week's edition of Your Family's Health.
We'd like to get your feedback on your family's health. Send your comments by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu. Podcasts of today's show are available on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This program was produced at the studios of Nassau Community College in cooperation with the nursing department. Join us next week for another edition of Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.